anytime I have like somebody be like, yeah, I support trans people, but only once they turn 18. It's like, okay, so you just want a trans teen to suffer. It was pretty clear for me as a young kid that I would have preferred to just live as a girl and, you know, be born female. And I cannot explain to cis people why I knew from a very young age that I should have been born female. I'm so fascinated by like transphobia because the people who get mad at me get mad because they literally don't understand what they are talking about. I've been uploading my shorts onto my second channel, Daily Dose of Nyara, which is going to be used in order for me to like upload stream content, also like upload the longer segments of the matches. And I had somebody be like, isn't this the guy who advocated for children to be on hormone blockers? I'm like, generally, who do you think puberty blockers were invented for? Ah, yes, puberty blockers for the 60-year-olds who are now going through puberty. There's also like the other point of like people being like, there's health risks if you let a child be on puberty blockers for too long. And it's like the goal is not for you to stay on puberty blockers forever. Puberty blockers were invented for those that are going into puberty too early, like precocious puberty. They are safe. They are still being used this way. Then there are like people pushing the idea that like puberty blockers are used to, you know, make everyone sterile. And it's like if you block androgens and so on, there can be an impact, but you're not supposed to just like take this all of the time. The idea is just like if you are questioning, you're trying to like figure yourself out, you feel like uncomfortable in your body and so on, you go to experts, you talk about this, you get therapy, and during the time, so you're not having like additional stress and like struggles with you undergoing like the wrong puberty, you take puberty blockers. It should be like for a year, for 2 years. If you're just pretending, you cannot pretend to be the opposite gender for like this long. So it's just helping a trans kid not be forced through irreversible changes that is going to cause them distress and is making them dysphoric and causing them to suffer their entire childhood and teenage years. People not wanting to like understand this, and they just like listen to fear. They don't listen to like actual common sense and like the reality. It is extremely exhausting and it's annoying. They've been so brainwashed by like a politically driven ideology that they refuse to listen to the experiences of trans people whose biggest regret is not transitioning sooner. A lot of the things that I am dealing with, a lot of the things that I am dysphoric about wouldn't have manifested if I didn't go through May puberty. I've talked about this a few times where if you have your body and you have your gender, if your gender is that of a girl, where your body is going through the changes of that of a boy, then it feels like you're drifting further and further away from where you could have been. And if you then switch to going through the changes, it's not going to be as effective, it's not going to be as efficient. Obviously, there's still a lot of changes that can happen due to you being on HRT, but there are certain things that are irreversible, right? Like my voice. I have to now do voice training in order to get my voice into the androgynous range, and I do not sound like I would have sounded like if I didn't go through this change. And it feels like I just want to go like over to this direction, right? I just want to have my body match my gender, but I am forced to deal with all of like the quote unquote natural changes, irreversible natural changes that make it difficult for me to get there. So if you stop this phase, you work with experts, you figure yourself out, and you know, your parents need to consent to it, multiple doctors need to consent to it, you know, you just go on HRT if you're actually, you know, trans, and then you still have like a period of time where the changes during them like manifesting, they are still largely reversible. You can just stop taking HRT. There's no harm being done. We're also talking about a very small minority of people, and not even 1% of like, you know, trans kids actually go into HRT because the education is bad. Maybe there aren't like any doctors who are competent enough in the area, and maybe they feel ashamed for who they are and they can't talk about this. They can't open up about it. So also like a huge part when it comes to like transitioning is also like social transitioning, and allowing a trans girl to go to school under their new name instead of being forced to have like a masculine name and be called like he, him, and be forced into like boys spaces and whatnot is actually already like beneficial for somebody's mental health. When it comes to transphobia, the cruelty is literally the point. It is about ostracizing us, it's about othering us, it's about segregation, it's about demonizing us, dehumanizing us, and taking away the only healthcare that is going to help us actually feel more comfortable in our bodies. Because if you resolve this mismatch, it's making it so much easier to actually deal with all of like the horrible things that are going on in the world. If I can feel more comfortable in my body, if I undergo changes that make it easier for me to like pass in my day-to-day basis, and I don't get misgendered constantly, I don't have to like explain myself, I don't have to like fear that if I go into women's spaces that I'm going to get assaulted for this, because, you know, trans women are 4 times more likely to be the victim of assaults, abuse than cis women, then it's making it easier to just go through my life, right? If I can live my life, if people see me as who I am, I can be a thriving member of society. I'm not sitting around on autopilot and disassociating and whatnot. So actually like going through these changes that align with my gender identity helps a lot, and it makes it easier for you to actually live with the fact that you are trans. You're making the best out of a shitty situation. Like, you don't have to be ashamed of the fact that you're trans. It's just like your environment makes you feel horrible for the fact that you are trans. And the reason why a lot of like dysphoria manifests is due to politicians, the government intervening and taking away your bodily autonomy. And it makes me sad that people just hate themselves. They hate other trans people. They punch down on other trans people. They believe all of like the lies about the trans community and so on. They are forced to repress. They are ashamed of who they are. They feel like they are AGP, like autogynephilia, which is like a discredited attempt at explaining why trans women exist, making it out to be like a kink. The fact that our environment just like sexualizes us. They treat us like zoo animals. They don't respect us. They don't view us as equal. And we are expected to concede to fascists who do not respect us, who don't want us to live. And then we still have people like debating whether or not we should actually have healthcare. You know, anytime I have like somebody be like, yeah, I support trans people, but only once they turn 18. It's like, okay, so you just want a trans teen to suffer. You don't want a trans teen to actually like live their life and make memories as themselves. You want to force them through irreversible changes, deal with body horror, torture them, because you cannot comprehend the fact that we are born this way and we understand who we are. It was pretty clear for me as a young kid that I would have preferred to just live as a girl and, you know, be born female. That was from a very young age. I was like 7, 8. Nobody told me that. I didn't know trans people existed. I didn't have like a term to explain how I felt, but I still felt this way. And I cannot explain to cis people why I knew from a very young age that I should have been born female. I cannot explain this mismatch to people who don't experience this, but I knew, right? And there's like some evidence pointing into the direction that being trans is an intersex condition, and your brain is a certain sex and your body is a different sex, and then there's like a mismatch and it doesn't connect with your brain, and it's easier to change your body, adjust your body, than it is to change your brain. Right? It is impossible. Conversion therapy doesn't work. It is torture. And I think it's fascinating that there are so many cis people who say that they are supportive of trans people, but they refuse to understand this point. They think that like us transitioning is like us getting a tattoo. It's like us getting cosmetic surgeries, when in reality it's life-saving. And I had to transition in order for me to live my life. I still get distressed whenever people are like, are you a boy? Are you a girl? Are you a man? What is your biological sex? Or something. I still get distressed because like I wish I could just like play games, go on the phone and live my life, create my content and so on, and have people be like, oh yeah, that's a woman. I don't want to be like this other. I don't want to be like this in between. I don't want to be constantly questioned on what I am. But because I had to go through my puberty, testosterone changed my vocal cords, it affected my voice, and now I have to do voice training, and I haven't figured it out well enough to, you know, move my muscles in a way to get the voice that I should have been having. So obviously I'm going to use my platform, I'm going to use my experience in order to share this and explain to cis people, to parents of trans kids and so on, why we are advocating for puberty blockers, why we are advocating for not just HRT for 18, but like 16, 14-year-olds and so on, why that should be the norm. Because like if gender dysphoria can manifest if you're 6, if you're 7, then you can go to a therapist, you can figure this out, you can work with experts and so on, and then before you're getting pushed into irreversible changes, you can go on puberty blockers for a year and so on, and then you transition. And if you listen to like the experiences of trans people, you will know that the biggest regret of a lot of us is not transitioning sooner. I wish I transitioned sooner. I wish I had access to a proper supportive environment to transition sooner and get access to this healthcare sooner. And then on the other end, if you listen to those who transitioned as kids, that transitioned as teens, they have benefited from this healthcare. It's still not perfect, right? Like me being trans is still not perfect. I still had like a core issue with my anatomy, with my primary sex characteristics, which is why I needed surgery. So puberty blockers do not fix everything. HRT doesn't fix everything, but it helps you get into the right direction. It also doesn't fix a shitty environment. So all of like the people who are like clinging on to the idea that like being trans doesn't lower the suicide rates or so on. It's like, yeah, because if you have a shitty environment that is like constantly invalidating you, that is constantly harming you, to constantly be discriminated against, to constantly be ostracized and so on, to see like the cruelty, the violence that like the government is doing, of course a lot of us are going to lose hope. But this is why it's important that we have like our community and we are there for each other. Transphobia is unreasonable. It doesn't align with reality. It doesn't align with biology. It doesn't align with the scientific community and so on. Gender affirming care helps. Trans healthcare helps. All of like this fear mongering, all of like this unreasonable things, it's just like it's a distraction. And a lot of conservatives sadly fall for these fear mongering tactics. I don't know if their brain just like works differently and they're like more sensitive to these things, but it's just like it makes it really difficult to explain something when your opposition lacks the capability of taking in new information and critically engaging with this information. But anyways, that's what I wanted to talk about. I've explained something similar like a while ago, back then, maybe like a year ago or something, that they are still using in order to push the idea that I'm actually a groomer. So I think repeating why I say the things that I do, it is kind of important because it's getting drowned out with like all of the misinformation out there.